Good morning to you all. My presentation today is on remote sensing. So our satellites and this specific map are helping us reconstruct the might of Ethiopia's past, medieval past. This map is about 700 years old, and it has in the central part or one part of Africa dragons, basilics, lions. But this one by Fra Mauro, 550 years old, actually has the Kuala, Barara, the Gojam Pass, and Nagesha Mariam. It looks more familiar. That was because the Kuala monks dictated and designed the whole of our area for Fra Mauro in Venice. So we're able today to reconstruct from an ancient map what our world looked like around Addis Ababa, the ancient capital of Ethiopia, called Barara, we presume, around the Gojam Pass, because we have the reference from this special map, which is actually impressive in a way, because it's the first map planisphere ever with such precision. And it does have a lot about Abassi in Ethiopia, as the man called it, and Barara, Banegest, or Menagesha Mariam, the Awash River, the Kuala. So here it is, from our map in its original emplacement in Venice. I must say that those days we had plenty of visitors from Europe, like this 500 years old Portuguese mission. And so we are convinced, because we have actually done some archaeology over the last 2 generations, that Washenekal is medieval, Gimbi Church along the area is medieval, Wodela up Mount Wachacha is medieval, but we also find that these fortresses were destroyed. And the reason of these mountain sites were destroyed is because of that war, the Ethio-Adal War. This is a Japanese art historian and her friend, a professor in Gondar University, evaluating the Pentagon, or the huge fortress we have up in Toto. It is an amazing fortress, and we did find also north of the Gojam Pass, 20 kilometers from Addis, this stele, rather unusual near Addis, and masses of circular structure made of megaliths or huge stones. We believe this is the site of Badabedi because the map tells us, from our map tells so, and those Portuguese visitors actually mentioned just before meeting Lebda Nengel or Dawit, finding these sort of round structures. So this is Adali Mariam. It's only about 40 kilometers as the bird flies south of Addis, and it is definitely medieval. So we did have the hints. We did probably know without realizing it that this area was the central powerhouse of the Barara, the Naxum Empire, of the medieval empire that fought with Harar. This is Badri. Amir Nur built these walls. It was the successor to that Ahmed Al-Ghazi, the conqueror, so-called left handed. This Arla and this mosque is probably a lot older. It's probably up to 800 and 900 years old, because the coins we found nearby are 1,000 years old. So some of you may remember my presentation last year. It was about African Soon planks or Soon ships like this one, and the fact that we did have fleets those days. So the Chinese were rather pleased about my discovery, and they gave us $20,000 so we may produce a world conference here in Addis Ababa. And actually the New Scientist, New African, this month's review has plenty of articles on that conference and on the relationship between the Horn of Africa and China. So the Christians had to trade with the Arabs, or I say the Adal Sultanate, and this is a medieval fort or construction we found in Afezero, not far from Arar, or the fief of Ahmed Grind, represented here in a painting at the IS library here in the Addis Ababa University. So it's again the Battle of Wayne Adega, and this is some of those amazing elite structure we find up in Toto, which have been battered somewhat, but they still show their royal style. This is a design of the citadel or the Pentagon up entrenched on the top of Entoto by Italian historian Enrico Bossi, who has seen himself here next to one of those towers, which were actually covered with this opus cyclopicus, which is perfectly matching huge stones, probably plastered in the past. Nearby there's an hypogeum, there's another chapel which no one seems to have described or no one has taken care of so far, but it's part of this huge complex, more than 40 hectares, up in Toto alone, we are beginning to believe was the capital city of Ethiopia, together with the northern parts of Addis Ababa. From the Pentagon, if you see east, you will not see the enemy coming. So we see these other structures, quasi-made and Italian-made, a parallelogram and a rectangle. And then just above the rich villas of Yeka, you find, or Maganania, you find this trapezium, which we just find recently. This is again one of those structures you find up in Toto Hills. There's about 5 hypogeums or washa up in Toto Hills. Professor Andrea Martinez, again from Gondor University, is here showing those cornerstones he believes are of Iberian influence, Portuguese or Spanish. This guy called the second of Lebruningel is actually the only African sovereign of that period who has a painting of himself, a portrait in a major European gallery. And this is a fort in Derbiga, which is very similar to the ones up in Toto, only it is north of Jijiga. So these are the forts of the Muslims, and they also look pretty old. It's amazing. We haven't finished studying this. All these areas should be excavated, but it's very much like one of those medieval forts of the Ottoman or European empires. So we still have to prove, I would say, that this Pentagon back exit, or portiella as we would call it in Italian, is part of a huge complex that has 12 protruding towers and is about 520 meters long as to its external ramparts. So we still need to study this, but we have hints. For example, we know locally that this church within the compound of Beta Elias was made by David I, so all the people there would say. And some painting inside these new structures we find are also interesting, while my friend Sam Walker, an American professional archaeologist, is showing me something like a hammer or a hard stone, and we did find lots of ornate stones like this steel hat, which was probably hanging from somewhere because it had things to hang it from a wall, or this leopard-looking little stone that sticks even its tongue out, which is partly damaged now up there. My daughter, 5 years old, found a spring cut in the rock, and there's lots of structures up there, like these hinges for a very, very major heavy door, probably up near the royal structure. This is part of those walls of royal or elite structure. This one is 4 meters high. Actually, just south of Addis Ababa, we know there's, for example, the Abnebero cave complex, about 40 caves inhabited by monks, and south of the area is the major site of Sire, we believe it's Massin from our map, which has these foundation slabs and this curious 3-position grinding stone, a mill in a way of those days. The basalt little stone was used to grind cereals, and this is a big cereal storage up Wachacha Mountain, and people know locally it was Haile Selassie's granaries. Under it, we believe, is a church. So the granaries are 200 years old. The church is again pre-Battle of Shimbra-Kure, like these Christian churches that were abandoned after the Battle of Shimbra-Kure. This is called Christina. The one before was again Adali Mariam. They were part of a clash of civilization. This is a mosque, for example, up Mount Kunduda, 3,000 meters, built of white rocks, brought up for about 400 meters to build it. This has been dated by a French mission about 80 years ago, at the 15th century, and it's in Nora, while more than 50 years ago, Francis and Frey, professor at Addis Ababa University, showed that just below Addis Ababa we have a complex of more than 50 watch of rock-hewn churches, like there's a few more, about 2 dozen, east of Lake Tana. So we do find, still today, new chapels and rock-hewn structures, like this one up in Toto, or again on what we call now the Barara site up in Toto in the northern parts of Addis Ababa, the biggest site we've found so far in the country. Paved roads, niche, walled alleys, a real world made of stone, or whatever we've left of it is made of stone, like these structures we call the 3-pillar facade, because there's 3 pillars at equal distance, or this quarry probably for the stones that we saw plastering the opposite Cyclopicus, or the outside of the Pentagon, the big wall. So these other towers, also 3 to 4 meters tall, are in Yeka, and they are called Italian Meda. I promised you this is no fascist fortress, nor is this one, which is just at the back of the richest villas in Ethiopia, on what we call the Maganania Hill. It's called Angurcha. It's a major trapezium-like forest, last one we saw on the satellite views, and it's literally 200 meters from this Nigerian billionaire villa next to the one of Haile Gebrselassie. But it's filled with rubbish. So we do need to study these sites, make survey, make excavation, make geographical reconstruction, which has already started as expert visit the area, because we should not destroy this capital. Where, amazing enough, again, Professor Sam Walker found some ancient plastering technique sign up there, which he thinks are of Portuguese or Spanish origin or influence. All over the entire site you find these steps, which have not made in the time of Menelik, and rather amazing rock-hewn structure like this, actually rock-cut trench, which was seen by Count Albugradian and Anta Paul Cotton about 120 years ago, when Menelik did claim, not Marco Vigano, that he had found the town Dawit, which makes perfectly sense to me, because this church has been proven by the Soter 1952 excavation to be of the time of Zera Jacob, so even the 15th century. Washa Mikael is a massive structure, very similar to the one we just saw up Beta Elias, while this is the first one I found from the satellite. Not difficult to spot because it's huge. It's a fort up Chacha, but this is even more interesting. It's a village down the Yeka Valley, and this is the original view of that 2.3 kilometers wall, rather rough walls here, up Mount Wachacha. So there's masses of sites to study, probably before they end up like this double tower we would have been proud of, maybe, which was actually a couple of years later from the views, before anybody really studied it, picked stone by stone to make border walls by the local. So I do say, my last word is, please let's save this amazing heritage, let us defend it.